Welcome everyone, I'm Keith Tebow at FRC Media. The Fall River City election is upon us once again, and we're getting set for the preliminary election, which will be held on Tuesday, September 17th. And in this election, there's only one race on the ballot. That's the race for mayor. There are 3 candidates running for mayor in the preliminary election, and we have the opportunity to speak with all 3 over the next few weeks. Joining me right now is one of the challengers to Mayor Jaziel Correa, Erica Scott-Pacheco. Erica, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to Fall River Community Media and BCC for hosting me today.
Well, you're very welcome. Let's get right to it. You've run once before, but let me just ask you, as you're out and about speaking to residents, going door to door, going to events, what is your short, like 30-second elevator speech on why you should be elected mayor?
That's a great question, and I actually am doing just that. I am in week 13 of knocking on thousands of doors of voters just like you in Fall River. Myself and my team have to give a huge shout out to my very hardworking team. We are out, rain or shine, talking to you, the voters, because it's really important in our grassroots campaign to listen to your concerns, to communicate my plans, I'm calling it the Pacheco plan with 4 components, and then to share why I'm running for mayor. So, my name is Erica Scott-Pacheco. I currently live in the Flint neighborhood and I work downtown as a fundraising director at a legal nonprofit. So that's my background. I have 15 years in financial management and fundraising in the nonprofit sector, serving community members and families just like your own. I think those are really critical skill sets for our next mayor to have, and I have the motivation and the experience to really restore respect and justice to our city hall. So that's why I'm respectfully asking for your vote. I'm number 1 on the ballot, and it'll be very easy to vote for me on Tuesday, September 17th.
Thank you for that. You were also part of the recall election back in March. You sat in this chair back in March. We did a similar interview back then. You know, the mayor was recalled. He won on the second half of the ballot by getting more votes. You finished 5th. What did you learn from that experience that you're taking into this election?
So that experience very much informs the current race, but in a lot of ways the current race is completely different. Let's keep in mind the recall was a winner take all, and so we had this very unusual outcome where someone won with only 35% of the vote. We will not have that outcome in this race. Why? Because we have a preliminary election. There's 3 of us running, but frankly there could be 100 people running and it won't matter because the field on September 17th is going to get narrowed down to 2, and then in November it'll be the ultimate winner, and the next mayor of Fall River will have to get at least 51% of the vote. And so in the recall election, it was my first time running. I felt like it was a whirlwind. It was 7 weeks. So in 7 weeks, I talked with voters, I got my name out there, and ultimately 754 people voted for me. I say 754, it was 755. I voted for myself, so that means 754 other people voted for me. In March, I did not know 754 people in Fall River. So I just want to thank each and every one of you. I've met many of you subsequently, door knocking, going door to door, talking to voters. And I am running again because I've received so much encouragement. So many people saying, Erica, we need you, we need your leadership, we need someone with a lot of financial acumen, and we need someone with your vision and your concrete plans. And so that is what motivates me to keep running again in this very different election this time around.
All right, let's get to some of the issues in the campaign. Some of them were brought up back in March. Wasn't that long ago. A lot of the same issues still face the voters of Fall River and those who are elected. Mayor Correa likes to boast that, you know, he eliminated some fees in Fall River, the trash fee, pay as you throw. He's looking to eliminate the stormwater fee if he's reelected for next year. What were your thoughts about the elimination of the trash fees and pay as you throw? And as we've seen recently, the amount that the city's paying for trash has actually gone up a little bit, as some people who had paid for private haulers are now back, and there's a lot more trash maybe this time of year, so those costs are up. If you were mayor, how would you first of all keep the trash system the way it is? If not, how would you make up for, you know, any rise in costs in terms of trash?
So I have no plans to bring back pay as you throw. I think that the system, the way that we had it, was a failure. in my own life, driving down the street in my neighborhood, I saw tons of households that were not buying the bags, and that wasn't fair to people like me and to people like you who did buy the bags. The other failure of pay-as-you-throw, we're still seeing the repercussions of now, and that's Jaisal Correa has never done a recycling campaign. Now, we actually got a grant to make enough postcards for all 30,000 plus households in Fall River on the do's and don'ts of recycling. Those postcards were never sent. It was another example of a project not being completed without strong leadership from Jaisal Correa's administration. And now we see the impact of that, where our recycling is contaminated. Now, we have a lot of people that don't know the do's and don'ts of recycling. Other cities, like Brockton, for instance, actually have stickers on the recycling bins with the do's and the don'ts. When I talk with voters, I learned a lot of voters want to recycle, want to do the right thing, but simply are not educated on what you can recycle. For instance, you cannot recycle the lid of a water bottle. That's something I didn't know myself, Keith. Mm-hmm. You cannot recycle the greasy part of a pizza box. So if you have a pizza box, you could actually like rip it in half, put the greasy bottom in the trash and recycle the top, or if it's all greasy, you have to throw it all away. So there's a lot of what is called wishful recycling. It's where people are thinking, I have an old metal lamp. Maybe I can recycle it. You cannot recycle an old metal lamp, right? People try to be wishful in their thinking and try to recycle to help the environment, which we all think is really important. But the outcome is that it costs more money per ton to throw away recycling than to throw away our trash. That's a big issue for me. I'm also really honored to have received the endorsement of the Sierra Club in my race for mayor of Fall River because of my demonstrated commitment to the environment, to conservation of our resources. So solving once and for all this issue of our solid waste disposal and our recycling is a huge priority for me. The way that I think we need to attack the program, first of all, is doing an educational campaign. Go back to basics. Make sure people know what they can recycle. There's no reason for contaminated recycling right now, but yet, it was costing about $82 a ton for solid waste and like $104 for recycling, which is over 20% more. There's no reason for recycling to be contaminated when there's no pay-as-you-throw. You can put all the trash you want in the trash and not have to pay for it. So my plan, part of the Pacheco plan to address this is that we're going to use revenue from the cannabis businesses very responsibly and help supplement the cost of solid waste. But we've got to bring that solid waste recycling fee down. It can't be either or, and that way it'll make it more balanced. And then we also need to be encouraging people to recycle because, as you mentioned, Keith, folks that use private haulers are back in the system now for solid waste. So there still is trash. There's still recycling in the trash. Again, going back to basics, recycling educational campaign will help educate people on what they can recycle, what they can't, and it'll really be more cost effective. So that's my plan.
The mayor, again, as I mentioned, is going to be proposing the elimination of the stormwater fee. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on eliminating that fee? Do you think it's responsible for the city to try to look to do that? I guess in general, and I'll get to a tax question next, but in general, what are your thoughts on trying to minimize the number of fees that a city resident has to pay?
So there's a couple questions there. In terms of minimizing fees, I think that I'm the most fiscally conservative candidate based on the plans or the ideas that I've heard from my opponents. I really strongly believe in being financially sound budgeting, using financially sound budgeting practices to make sure that all of your tax dollars go back to you in the form of services, not in $10,000 snow stipends for my chief of staff for 3 days of work, as Jaisal Correa's chief of staff received, not in placing my friends in high-paying jobs in the administration when they don't have the experience. I'm going to be fiscally responsible and conservative for you because you paid for it. It's what you deserve. And in terms of this stormwater fee, at first I was like, why are we paying a fee for rain when I first heard about this? But I researched it. I did public records requests. I educated myself on the facts. It's not a rainwater fee. It's actually mandated by the federal government. So there's only about 3 or 4 states that are having to go by the federal regulations, and we're one of them. So we actually have to go by EPA, which is Federal Environmental Protection Agency requirements about the water that we release back into Mount Hope Bay. As everyone knows, we have really been working hard to clean up the Taunton River and Mount Hope Bay because there were very high levels of contamination. not in Mount Hope Bay, but for instance, I think probably many of you have seen Watuppa Pond is having high algae blooms that also a lot of people think is related to raw sewage from septic systems that have failed being released. So I just share that as an example of some of the very real consequences, negative health and environmental impacts that can happen when we're releasing contaminated water into clean water. And so we have to go by these federal regulations about the water that we release. It's not a rainwater fee. It does rain, but in the ground, there's all kinds of contamination, from dog waste to oil to gas to trash. All kinds of contamination that gets in the water, gets in the sewers. I actually think of it more as like a sewer fee, because we have to then pay to clean that contaminated water before we release it back into Mount Hope Bay. I use that explanation because I didn't understand it myself, and I want to make sure that you, the voters, have an understanding. I'm all about transparency. So now that you understand what exactly that fee is, can we get rid of it? I currently do not see a way to get rid of that fee. I am all for reducing fees wherever I can, but I also know that money doesn't grow on trees, as do you, because we both work hard to make money, to provide for our families, and to pay our taxes responsibly. I really would love to hear more about Jazel Correa's plan to get rid of the fee, because I don't see a way that we can. And we certainly cannot thumb our nose at federal regulations. I'll give you an example. Jazel Correa recently, this past summer, in the past couple months, tried to give his family members, his girlfriend's family, an exclusive right to operate an entertainment venue on City Pier. That sounds like a great idea. I'm a very strong advocate of doing more community development, economic development on our waterfront, a major asset for Fall River. However, the feds came in because we haven't been doing reporting, and potentially we haven't been doing mandated cleanup of contaminants called PCBs that are at City Pier. They're in the ground, they cause cancer. We are required by the federal government to clean up this contamination, these PCBs, before any kind of development goes down there, for your safety, for my safety, for everyone's health and well-being. Now that didn't happen. We're not sure if the cleanup happened and nobody reported it, but this was a major ball dropped that's hampering our economic development, our use of the waterfront. And it also shows that the feds don't play around. So when we're mandated to pay fees to clean the water because of federal regulations, we have to comply.
Mayor Correa has talked about, in terms of, because when he eliminated fees, the question comes up, well, how do you make up the revenue that was
Correct.
lost for those fees? The mayor is hoping to use some of the marijuana dispensary taxes that are coming in for recreational marijuana as one of those supplements. The mayor has issued 14 letters of non-opposition to potential vendors who would like to do business in the marijuana industry here in Fall River. Sort of two questions here. One, do you support the growth of the industry here in Fall River? And two, should there be a limit to the number of those licenses to run the dispensaries here in the city?
That's a great question. I know it's a really hot topic, and I hear from so many voters like you, what are my plans? And I will say the same answer that I've been very consistent about. It's not up to me. As mayor, I'll work with my partners in government, the city council, and the school committee, and that limit is set by the city council. That's just the way that the system is in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, I think most of us saw that really embarrassing meeting last week where Jazel Correa stormed down, interrupted the city council meeting. They had to pause the meeting, stopping the city council from doing the business of you, the people. And my understanding is that in that meeting, they set a limit of 11, and Jazel Correa has issued 14 letters. Now, it is true that having a letter does not mean you automatically have a permit, but it is a really key piece of the puzzle. You have to have a letter before you can get a permit. And so, as mayor, I will respect that limit set up by the city council, because it's not my role to dictate. It's my role to work in concert and to have a positive working relationship. So I respect the institution of the city council, and you, the voters, put them in place to do your business. So you have elected them. They said that there's going to be a limit, and I would respect that as mayor.
I want to get into economic development now. You know, the city of Fall River has, its employment numbers are still lagging the rest of the state. We are unfortunately still one of the higher have one of the higher unemployment rates in the Commonwealth. What plans would you have as mayor to not only bring in some high-paying jobs for our city residents, but also in terms of attracting other business into the city. What would be your plan for economic development?
Economic development and education are linked together in the Pacheco plan, and they're really hugely of interest to me. In my spare time, I volunteer as a mentor advising our kids, local kids, applying to colleges. And that's really important because we have a lot of talent in our city. But unfortunately, too many of our kids graduate and leave the city and don't come back. And that's what's known as brain drain. Fall River is actually tied with Phoenix, Glendale, Arizona metropolitan area. So our Fall River metropolitan area and Phoenix, Glendale, Arizona are tied for brain drain nationally. Now, this is a big problem. This is not a ranking that we want. We don't want to be at the top of the list for it's 2- and 4-year college grads who are leaving. We want to keep those people here. Now, to address this issue, I'm proposing a program called the Fall River Fellows. Fall River Fellows will provide leadership and coordination at the mayor's office level to work with local businesses, nonprofits, city agencies, BCC, DTA, to make a list of available internships and apprenticeships. And I want to create an atmosphere where all of these students work together, get to know each other, have weekly lunches, really feel connected to Fall River. So they'll be earning potentially college credit, they'll be potentially having a paid internship, they'll be developing relationships with business leaders in the community, and they'll be understanding why it's important to stay here, to buy houses here, to raise their family here, and to invest in our city. That's what I'm going to do as Fall River Fellows. As mayor, I'll take the first fellow in my office. Now, economic development, as you can probably tell, we need to have businesses that provide good paying jobs. For far too long, economic development in Fall River has not been driven by policy. Let me be clear. Economic development policy is not a Chinese restaurant opening or a Dollar Tree opening or a hair salon opening. Those small businesses probably would open whether or not Jazel Correa is in the mayor's office, but he likes to somehow credit himself. When you have policy, you look at key components: housing, access to education, access to good paying jobs. We have far too many people, and access to infrastructure. We need a good infrastructure as well so that we have safe and clean neighborhoods. But as I was saying, we have far too many people who are struggling to get by. It is true that nationwide our unemployment is down. We still are high for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but that only tells part of the story. There are far too many people working minimum wage jobs, 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs, just to get by, just to pay the rent. And rent is rising as speculation around South Coast Rail increases. These are facts, these are realities, and that's why I'm going to use my financial experience, my 15 years of experience, to serve you as a mayor, to make sure that we're judicious about giving up TIFs or tax breaks to companies, and that we hold those companies accountable. Amazon claimed they were going to pay a good wage of about $35,000 a year. They're not. That's not their average wage. But we didn't put in the paperwork any way to hold them accountable. I'm going to make sure that we hold corporations accountable. And also that'll help alleviate the tax burden on homeowners, because businesses pay about double the rate that homeowners do.
I want to dovetail, you mentioned education as being sort of hand in hand with economic development. How important will your role be as mayor and chairperson of the school committee to ensure that our youngsters are getting the education they need, at least that first step in terms of public education, so they can get a good college education and therefore stay here?
Mm-hmm. Education really is the key to unlocking your future. I went through K-12 public schools, and I ended up being a first-generation college grad on one side of my family, and I graduated from Harvard, which is a huge achievement that would not have been possible without the public school teachers that supported me, that encouraged me, and that educated me. So as mayor and as ex officio chair of the school committee, it's going to be a huge priority to make sure that we have a quality public education system where every kid can graduate and set themselves up for success. For far too many years, I saw my mom, who's a special educator in the public schools, I saw her having to buy everything from hand sanitizer to paper to markers. When we're focused on school spending, I want to make sure we're giving the funding to the people that need it. And that's the teachers, and that's the people that are serving the students, and not focused on giving really high administrative salaries. Because we want to make sure that teachers that paraprofessionals, that aides, that counselors, that those who are doing the work of helping our kids learn and grow have everything they need to make sure our kids receive the education they deserve.
Let's move on now to public safety. The mayor has pledged and he has delivered on providing the police and fire department with a lot of equipment, needed equipment, cars, fire trucks, ladder trucks, and the like. He's also raised the number of personnel in the police and fire department. How do you envision your role? Would you like to continue that trend in terms of personnel in the police and fire department? And at what level would we be, in your mind, safe here in Fall River?
Well, I'll tell you that I hear from far too many voters who do not feel safe here in Fall River. And a huge priority and part of the Pacheco plan is that we have safe and clean neighborhoods where you feel safe in your own home and the neighborhood looks and feels good. That's a huge part of economic development policy as well, because if we're trying to get businesses to invest here and kids to stay here, they need to feel safe. Right now, I know far too many people don't, which is really unfortunate. So as mayor, what can we do? I commend Jaisal Correa for working with our police and fire, and I will continue to do so because it's really critical to have a good partnership with law enforcement and also with the community. I know that we use community policing models. I want to increase that. For instance, in my neighborhood on Pleasant Street, I would love to have more walking and bike beats. And that's something I hear from small business owners, from residents, from people shopping. There's no reason that we can't transform Pleasant Street, South Main Street, some of these major thoroughfares into bustling, fruitful business areas, except that people don't feel safe. People don't feel safe. They're not going to want to hang out there. They're not going to want to spend their money there. They're not going to want to support small business. So we need to make sure we have community policing. We need to make sure that people feel they can turn to the police, that the police are visible. And that's a big reason that I'm going to bring back the neighborhood coordinator as part of the administration. Jaisal Correa thinks that he doesn't need a neighborhood coordinator. He wants a special assistant in addition to a chief of staff. I don't need two people to help me do the job. I'm going to be a full-time mayor. I'm going to be on call, ready to work for you 24/7. And I'm going to make sure we have a neighborhood coordinator who will be that key link. I serve as a volunteer on the board of directors of the Flint Neighborhood Association, although clearly that organization is nonpartisan and not endorsing me. But the reason that I volunteer is because it's really important to have leadership in the community. And one thing I love, and this is not just the Flint neighborhood, I was at Corky Road Neighborhood Association a couple weeks ago. At both places, the police come and do a report. They talk about crime stats, but they don't just leave it at that. They then genuinely ask, what concerns are you seeing? Because we all know that stats only tell half the story. It's really important that we have a neighborhood coordinator who can be in the room at those meetings. Right now, Jaisal Correa is completely isolated. There's no staff member of the administration who goes to those meetings. And I think it's a shame. It's a missed opportunity to help with community policing, to help identify issues. And that's why the Pacheco plan includes bringing back the neighborhood coordinator and getting rid of a special assistant.
What role can a mayor play in the city like Fall River to help in the opioid crisis that not only Fall River is seeing, obviously, but cities around the country? What role can a mayor play, and how would you do that?
So, as mayor, I'm going to focus on making sure that service providers and agencies in our city have the resources to do what's called a Drug Endangered Children's Alliance. At the nonprofit I work at, so many of our clients are impacted with their family members with the opioid epidemic, and it's really disheartening to see. My own family has been impacted by alcoholism, and I understand that these substance use disorders really have a network and impact everyone, not just the person using, but family members, kids, coworkers, neighbors. We see it with crime. We see it with mental health concerns, behavioral health concerns. So when I went to a training sponsored by the Children's Advocacy Center and I learned about these drug endangered children's alliances that they have set up all over the country, I knew I really wanted to take leadership to make sure that we have one in Fall River. And this is an alliance that focuses on preventing addiction before it starts, because sadly we're really seeing intergenerational opioid addiction and use at this point. We have grandparents or even great-grandparents raising grandkids and great-grandkids because 2 or 3 generations have been impacted, have lost custody, cannot take care of their kids. And we all know that what kids see, they do. They learn, they model behavior that they see around them. And so I think it's really critical for the mayor's office to take leadership and make sure that we have an alliance focused on the best interest of the child. I used to volunteer to be a guardian ad litem, which is a children's special advocate appointed by a judge, and that advocate's sole concern is to make sure the best interest of the child is represented in probate and family court. So I'm going to use that experience to help inform my leadership as your mayor. I really want to make sure that we're focused on making sure every kid is safe and that no more kids grow into teens and grow into adults who become victims of this epidemic.
You referenced earlier the meeting of the city councilor in August where the mayor had come down. They were talking about the streetscapes issue, and the mayor and the city council they've had a tough relationship for quite some time. As mayor, how do you see yourself working with your other partners in government?
So I have already had demonstrated success in working with the partners in government. Notably, I really led on organizing against the proposed Invenergy fracking plant in Rhode Island that really amazingly was defeated. $35 million in legal fees alone, $1 billion in investment into dirty fossil fuel that we don't need, that is unwanted. And with community organizing here in Fall River and in Rhode Island, we were able to defeat that plant. Now, the reason that it impacted Fall River is that Jason Correa's administration made a secretive deal via the Watauga Water Board to sell your drinking water to a fracking plant. It wasn't even a good deal, because you look at the deals that other cities in Rhode Island got, and we were actually giving our water away for a 90% discount. So even if you are an oil baron in North Dakota and you think that fracking is the greatest thing since sliced bread, this was a terrible deal because we were giving our water away for almost no money. The reservation fee that we took was $25,000, and Woonsocket got offered $900,000 and some ball fields for kids. Anyway, I worked with the city council to educate them about this deal because they had no idea. Again, this deal was all in secret. It was made in August and it didn't come out until the contract was leaked to a reporter in Rhode Island in October, and this was in 2016. So I worked with the city council with subcommittees. I had one-on-one conversations to inform them about what happened, to educate them about why this was a problem, and ultimately they all agreed. I don't know about you, but unfortunately it's pretty uncommon for all 9 city councilors to agree about anything, because there has been a lot of gridlock and discord, especially with Jason Correa at the helm. But anyway, the city council agreed, and they passed not 1 but 2 resolutions, one against the water deal and one against the plant itself. And I really thank the city councilors for their leadership, and that was accomplished through a mutually beneficial and respectful relationship. So I'm going to continue to use those skills as mayor and to work with the city council and the school committee, because we are partners in government.
I've only got about a minute left. How can people find out more about your campaign, and why should people again vote for Erica Scott-Pacheco?
I ask for your vote respectfully on Tuesday, September 17th. I'm #1 on the ballot, Erica Scott-Pacheco. And if you want someone who has concrete plans, who has carefully formulated the Pacheco plan to benefit you after talking to thousands of voters like you, I ask for you to vote for me. If you think it's important for our city to have someone at the helm with a lot of experience, 15 years in financial management, I ask you to vote for me. And if you think it's important to have a full-time mayor, which I will be for you, then I ask for your vote. Together, we can restore respect and justice to our city hall at a time when our city needs it more than ever. So thank you very much.
Well, Erica, I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. All the best in the election.
I appreciate your time.
We'll talk to you soon. I appreciate it.
Great.
And for those of you watching, of course, we want you to make sure that you have your voice heard. And please make a point to vote on Tuesday, September 17th in the Fall River preliminary election. Have a great day.